Hi, I'm Dr. K, and in this video, I want to pull the curtain back and give you a behind-the-scenes look at how I help clients to transform their habits. I want to show you how and why the process works. So let's get into it. The first step in the process is turning up to the habit audit session. This is a very relaxed but focused 60-minute session via Zoom where I find out what are your main challenges, what are your main goals, and then we figure out the best initial habit to start to get the ball rolling. And this habit should be the one that moves the needle the most. Now, what would that habit be? It depends on the person. So maybe it's starting a to-do list and using it reliably. Some people don't do that. Maybe it's meditation. Maybe it's getting more sleep. Maybe it's taking those first steps in creating a reliable lead generation process. Whatever it is, we reduce it down to one habit. And then we go to the habit tracker. So this is an example of a habit tracker here, and we enter in the habit here. In this case, the example is starting a to-do list. Now, how important is this habit tracker? It's crucial because it fits in with the 7-step habit change framework that I use. And this is the system that makes starting new habits ultra reliable. This is the part that makes it so reliable. So let's talk through this just so you get a feel for what's involved. The first part is obviously selecting the right habit. And as I said, that comes out in the habit audit session where we figure out what's the habit that's really going to move the needle and get things rolling. The second step is creating a trigger. Every habit needs a trigger. If you don't have a trigger, you're not going to remember to do the behavior. And just think of an example. If you ever thought, I'm going to start meditating this week, and then you get to the end of the week and you didn't even do it once, the reason is you didn't have a proper trigger or a reminder, a prompt to do the behavior. So as an example, you can see here in the habit tracker, we have a column here for the trigger. Every habit needs a trigger. And spoiler alert, you're not always going to get the trigger right the first time. You may need to experiment with it, but that's a big part of the process. As you're going to see, trial and error is a big part of the process. The third step is starting the behavior or starting the habit. And we want to start small. We want to microdose. So let's say, for example, you want to meditate for half an hour a day. A lot of people would just say, I'm going to start meditating for half an hour tomorrow morning. But this is a big mistake because it's too much of a change. It's overwhelming. It's going to be difficult for you to incorporate or integrate that into your schedule. So for example, when I first started meditating, I had a terrible morning routine at the time. My morning routine is much more dialed in now, but at the time it was terrible. I used to drag myself out of bed in the morning with just enough time to get to work in time. So if I decided then, right, tomorrow morning I'm going to start meditating for half an hour, I wouldn't have been able to do it because there just wasn't enough slack in my routine. I wouldn't have been able to fit it in. So instead you want to start small, but how small? Well, instead of starting with 30 minutes, think about what's going to be the easiest amount for you to start with. Maybe it's 15, maybe it's 10, maybe it's 5. Honestly, I think 1 minute is a great way to start. Why 1 minute? Because you want to make it easy. You want to make it so easy that it would be ridiculous to not start doing it. So the next step is tracking, and you want to, as I said, always track your habits. This is very important. And so we've got the example here of the habit tracker. And just to note here, the first habit is usually that move the needle habit, the one that we figure out in the habit audit session. But the second habit I work with clients on is always checking the habit tracker spreadsheet. We want to make that a habit too, because as you're going to find, if we can make that a habit, it's going to make the rest of the process so much easier. The next step is reward. When we create a habit, we're repeating a behavior over and over again. And when we start doing that behavior, we need a reward associated with it, because if you have a reward associated with it, you get that dopamine hit, which dopamine makes you anticipate and crave and seek out that new behavior to repeat it. So for example, let's say it's after dinner one night and you decide to have some ice cream. Now, you get a dopamine hit from eating that ice cream because it's tasty, it's enjoyable, it's rewarding. So the next night, because of that dopamine hit, you get that little craving that you feel like, oh, I wouldn't mind having some ice cream after dinner again. Then you have it again. Each time you have it, you get that dopamine hit that makes you want to do it again. And by repeating that behavior of having the ice cream over and over again, you start to create the habit. So that's what habits are. They're basically behaviors that we've repeated over and over again in the same context until they become automatic. We don't need to think about them. The sixth step is iteration. So a lot of people think that when they hire me to help them, that the accountability I provide is looking at their habit tracker and then giving them a hard time, yelling at them when they didn't do what they said they were going to do. But this couldn't be further from the truth. My approach is actually the complete opposite of this. My accountability isn't there to make you feel bad. It's actually just to figure out why it didn't happen and how to make sure it does happen and how to make that as easy as possible. So when we meet each week, I don't say, why didn't you do that? I say, what got in the way of you doing it? It's about curiosity. It's about problem solving. So if you didn't do the new behavior in a particular week, the reason is not that you're unmotivated. I mean, you're hiring me to help you, so you're obviously quite motivated. The issue here is that A, it's not a habit yet, and B, there's something getting in the way of you doing that habit. We need to figure out what that is, and that's what I'm here for, to help you to solve those problems, to iterate, and to do those behaviors consistently. So the final step is scaling, and this is where once you start doing the behavior consistently, let's say you're doing that 1 minute of meditation consistently, we start increasing it to 2 to 5 to 10, 15, 30 minutes of meditation, whatever the eventual goal is. But there's something that happens after we've done that. So we've followed the 7-step process for the first habit, but even as we're starting this first habit, we're adding in a second habit, and then we're adding in a third habit, and then we're adding in habits after that. So if you look at this example, and this is a real actual example from a client. So this is in February. They've just started their habit tracker. They're hardly doing it. There's only 2 habits on there. They've missed a few days. It's very inconsistent. And 8 weeks later, so this is February, in April, look at this habit tracker. It's filled with habits and they're happening consistently. These 2 images, more than any, capture my approach better than any words could actually. It really summarizes how it works. So it starts off slow, inconsistent. It doesn't seem like much. And then 8 weeks later, you've turned it into a juggernaut, or basically a habit juggernaut. Now you think about people who add 1 new habit in their life. Let's say it's meditation. They can't stop talking about how great it is. Now imagine adding 10 new habits, which, as you can see, isn't that hard at all with this system. When you've got 10 new habits, that's on another level. It's really life-changing. So hopefully you can see from this that the magic here is in the system. You get the system working for you slowly to begin with, but if you keep at it, even in as little as 8 weeks, you can actually become unstoppable like this. I hope that was helpful. If you want to get started getting my help to create this unstoppable system working for you, then get in touch and I'll hopefully speak with you soon.